Very good evening, all. Welcome to our latest webinar with Momentum. Tonight's theme is Behind Every Broker, the journey from an account exec to a business owner. I'll be introducing my guests shortly, but first we'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping, if that's okay. First, we'll be talking to Matt about his journey to running a successful independent brokerage in Hertfordshire. We'll understand what went through his mind, what happened during the early stages, and we'll also talk to the point about when he started talking to Olivia, his other half, around what happened with her in regards to how she adapted to the idea of the family moving from PAYE into their own business. The aim of this webinar is to get under the skin of the impact starting a business has on not only the one starting it up, but also the whole family. I'm looking forward to seeing how the two of them react to the questions being raised. As always, we've got a chat function, so you can send messages as we go along. I stress confidentiality is key, so feel free to change the name or to your location, for example, as you can see on the screen. There's a button near the chat box, so just click that, and as you can see from the instructions on the screen, you know what to do. Lastly, there is some ground rules, which I'm sure you all appreciate. We're not here to probe how much money has been made, nor are we going to go into look specifically at what the Momentum proposition is, but we're going to look at how, obviously, Momentum supported them, and no doubt Matt will give some insight into that. I know these discussions don't come easy for Matt and Olivia. You may not know how to start these conversations yourself, but hopefully through today, you'll get a few pointers to begin your own journey to become a successful business owner. If you're watching this with your other half, they too can ask questions, and I genuinely mean that we want them to. Once again, just simply using the chat function on the side. So let's get into the chat. So first of all, a very warm welcome to Matt and Olivia. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
It's that awkward moment on the couch. How are you feeling about it all?
Yeah. Do you know what? We were fine. We were fine until it just said stream is live, and I just turned to Liv and was like, my heart is beating.
Well, Matt, you've been through this before. You know it's a fairly simple thing to go through, and obviously the next hour is going to fly by. So let's start with you, Matt, if you don't mind. I mean, what was the exact moment when you decided I'm going to start my own brokerage, and what led to that decision?
So I think I've spoke about this before on these podcasts. It was a combination of a few things. COVID being the main starting point, because I was working from home. I've got my own specialism, and I was working by myself, managing a book of business at one of the large nationals. And I just sort of came to a realization that, you know what, I think I can do this by myself.
Yeah.
And then probably from there, another 18 months to 2 years of just me. I'm sure we'll get into this as well. Me just perhaps not having the belief of just going to do it. So yeah, eventually, after much deliberation, and Liv was involved in that, we made the decision, or I made the decision.
Yeah. Did you second guess yourself in the months leading up to quitting? I mean, what doubts did you wrestle with at the start there, Matt?
I think the main one is now I look back, it seems silly, but 100% of people will go through it. It's just that panic and sheer anxiety of where's the money going to come from? You know, You've been doing this job for so many years. You've got clients that have trusted you, in my case, for sort of 12 years. And for some reason, you just have these mind blanks of, oh my, like, what if no one comes? What if no one comes to join me on my new thing? So that was all it was, really.
I mean, everybody, I'm sure, would probably say the same thing listening today about leaving a paycheck behind is terrifying. But somehow you managed to work that out, Matt. How did you get from there to saying, all right, now's the time?
So we were at a stage in our life where we were at a big turning point, because I was just about to turn 30. So sort of kids and weddings and things like that start to creep up. So it was probably the worst time, wasn't it, really, when you look back? But I had not had enough, but I'd thought about it for so long that I had to scratch the itch. It was just every single day it was playing on my mind. You know, I need to do this by myself. I've got to give this a go. And eventually, after many conversations with you, obviously the support that Momentum offered, I just bit the bullet and done it.
I must have missed that big turning point at 30 of my life. Maybe it's coming at 50 for me. One to look forward to. But did you have a backup plan in case things didn't work out, or was it, when you basically made the decision, it was just all or nothing?
Yeah, it was all or nothing. There were sort of financial backstops. We sort of agreed on I need to have X amount of savings, but again, that becomes almost like another decision that just drags on, because you sit there and think, right, I need 3 months, and you get to that and you think, oh, do you know what, we could probably do with another 3 month savings, and then you think, well, actually that's the bills covered, but we probably want a holiday, so I'll wait for that as well. So yeah, eventually we got to a figure and agreed on it, and then I just handed my resignation in and off we went.
Yeah, and this is the bit where we go from he said, she said. So we move on to what Olivia has to say. And before we go on, I should apologise for both me and Olivia. Both of us got a bit of flu/cold. So if you hear a little bit of a sniff or a little bit of a cough, we'll apologise for that now. But Olivia, when Matt told you he wanted to start his own broker, what was your immediate reaction?
I was shocked, to be honest with you, because we just moved in together. So we just committed to a mortgage and all the bills and everything. And then he told me, I want to quit my job and, try and do this on my own. And I thought, you what? Like, I don't think so. So that was my initial, was the fear of like, wow, we've just moved in, and how are we going to, if you really are serious about this? It was almost like I'd never heard about it before. And then all of a sudden, here we are. So we had quite a few discussions about it, didn't we, really, before anything happened. And I think for me, like what Matt said, was the financial side of things. Like, I just thought, how will we do this? Because on my salary alone, if he didn't make any money, I couldn't cover the bills. So it was more just, I wanted that reassurance that Matt would be able to save X amount, sort of just to get us through at least the first 6 months. And then go from there. So that was my initial fear.
And when you had that conversation, how soon or how far ahead of engaging with me, Matt, was those originally conversations, or was that post talking to me?
I think
it's very soon after.
It either straddled or was just after, because I think the first time we met was in a coffee shop in Hartford, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you told me to go home and tell Liv that I've just handed my resignation in, or something along those lines.
That was the one.
Yeah, but the problem is I've always been quite siloed. I've always been sort of like, once I get my mind on something, I become very and it's led to many like heated debates, we'll call them, between me and Liv. In that I become really tunnel focused, and I just go and not do something. Obviously, I wouldn't do something like this without speaking to Liv, but it was like, I really want to do this. I have to make this work. So I actually think it was after we met Alistair for the first time.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think the line I used, Liv, was, what does your other half think of this? And I think Matt's response was, I think she's there. And I said, all right, go home and say to her, by the way, I've resigned and I'm going to start this brokerage, and see how she reacts. And by all accounts, that's exactly what you did do, wasn't it? And fast forward to where we are today, two and a bit years on. But so Liv, you had concerns around finances. What about other things along the lines of work-life balance? Did you even reflect on that at this point, or talk about what that looks like now? But back then, were you worried about that? How this would affect your relationship and the rest?
Yeah. So see, Matt and I worked for the same company before he decided to leave, and I knew he could get pretty stressed with work, and in doing that he would almost like shut down, like, don't talk to me, I've got, I'm having my stressful moments. And I thought, oh God, if he's doing this on his own, then it's only going to get worse. So my initial fear was like, oh no, if he's really stressed out with where am I going to get the next client from and things like that, I did worry that it could potentially have an impact. But actually, it's actually been a lot better, I think, because I think being his own boss, he's not got to sort of bow down to anybody or be like, right, this is what I'm doing next and this and that. Like, he's a lot more flexible and I think even more passionate about it. because at the end of the day, it's his business, so he's even more hungry for it. So if anything, it's been a lot better in terms of work-life balance, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think we even had this conversation earlier because like I said, that I'm very like sort of tunnel vision.
Yeah.
When I used to get busy at work, I used to just sit in the office by myself. No one come and talk to me. And then when I'd work from home, it would be the same. We'd sit next to each other on desks, but I'd say to Liv, don't talk to me because I'm busy. Whereas now I can take myself away from it because I can have a Friday afternoon off and I can work on the Saturday morning, just work-life balance. I'm not dictated to anymore. And I just find ways to de-stress if it means just stopping work and finding another time in the week to do it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so you talked about financially preparing for the business, Matt. You said, do you need 3 months? Do you need 6 months? How did you go through that? And where did you probably draw the line to say, you know what, that's enough. That will get us where we need to get to?
Yeah. So I alluded to it at the beginning, but I think at first I thought 6 months. I thought, right, 6 months is you Google it and you read online and that's what everybody does apparently. So I thought that's probably a good starting point. And then
I'll stop you there for a second. For everybody who doesn't know Matt loves a spreadsheet. So I'm sure there is a very, very scientific answer to this.
And do you know what? Liv hates me for it as well. I've got spreadsheets to the penny. But anyway, besides the point.
Even all our friends know him as like Mr. Spreadsheet.
So I did budget it on a spreadsheet as to this is what the bills will be for the next 6 months. This is what I need to make. But again, I'd get to the 6 months and then I'd be like, no, I can't not have a holiday this year because I promised Liv that our personal life won't take a real battering because of this. So I ended up speaking to you, Alistair, and you mentioned about the potential for Momentum to fund part of, whatever that might look like. And it was actually that done it for me. That was the tipping point. I never wanted to rely on it and fortunately didn't have to use it. But that was almost the tipping point to say, right, if that's not going to be the catalyst that allows you to finally do this, you're never going to have it. So And
sort of jumping in on that, it almost gave me that reassurance of like, okay, Momentum have said, like if you really, really need this money, it's there and we can work out sort of paying it back and things like that. But it then gave me the reassurance of like, we're not going to lose our house, or do you know what I mean? So I think that definitely made me a lot more comfortable as well.
Well, I think the reality of the situation is you see a business plan, you see an individual, and look, we've helped so many people over the years that we know whether or not someone's going to make a success of it. And when you see that, you're prepared to put your money behind it and back it and make sure that they succeed. And fast forward to today, it's been a brilliant business. But let's not jump too far ahead today. But how long did it take you, Matt, you think, in regards to getting the business to a point where it was creating, I was going to say the word reliable, but that's not what it is. It generated a level of income and you think, actually, do you know what? This might be all right.
So I was very fortunate in that it started quite well. It started very quickly, but that was more, you create your own luck, right? But that was more luck, I think, than, because I was obviously under a covenant, so I couldn't speak to any of what I would call my reliable clients who you'd sort of base a business plan off. But I got lucky at the beginning, but then probably, I think 12 months was the reflection point where I thought, wow, I'm under covenant for a year, but I've made a success. We've more than paid the bills. We've done what we wanted to do. So probably about 12 months was when I felt really sort of confident in myself.
Okay. And did you, obviously you talked about external funding. So how did you fund this business from start to finish? You pretty much all savings, or was there some additional support? I appreciate we guaranteed some additional funding if required.
Yeah, no, it was all self-funded. But again, goes back to being tunnel visioned. It was when I knew this is what I wanted to do. It sort of became a passion project, and it was all of my spare cash and more is going into this savings pot because I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to give it a go. So it was all self-funded.
Excellent. And Olivia, for you, being in the insurance industry, it's probably the insurance industry is the worst industry to think about taking a risk and starting on your own, because we're all a bit risk adverse, aren't we? But did you have any sort of thoughts around contingency plans if this all goes sideways?
I don't think I did. I don't think either of us did, actually. Do you know what? I think, like you said, I am quite risk averse. So initially when he came to me with this, I thought, no, please don't do it. We're comfortable. We've both got a good job, and, why do you want to go and risk it all? And then I sort of sat back and thought, I know how he works. I know how passionate he is. I know how well respected he was with the clients that he used to work with, where we both worked. And I thought it could literally just fly for him. So I just put all my trust into you, really, and didn't think about what might happen.
Yeah.
And I did always think, like, look, if it didn't work out, he could just go and get a job back where we work or somewhere else. I think that would have been the backup plan if you needed it.
Yeah.
And how did you as a couple transition from a regular paycheck to managing the household budgets? Matt, I know you love going to Dubai. I know you both love going to Dubai. How did you manage all of that, knowing that you're going to go through that period where that would be under a bit of pressure?
I personally told you, because Matt obviously earned more than me prior to him leaving his job, I did say, you just got to make sure that you're still putting that same amount in a month, because I'm not putting in any more.
Yeah.
So that was kind of...
Yeah, because again, it just goes back to being, I love a spreadsheet, everything's down. So I knew exactly for the next 6 months what I was going to be putting into the joint account, which is where all of our bills come out of. And we booked a holiday to Dubai for the September. And we were like, right, that's it. That is our personal life for the next 12 months. If I don't make a penny, that's what our life's going to look like. The house is still going to be here. We're going to have the lights switched on, and we're going to go on a holiday. Anything more than that is a bonus. So it was just about being really tight and buying into the fact that I was completely wedded to this business for the first 12 months to not potentially make it a success. It had to be a success.
I think it's more wedded to the joint account, isn't it, as opposed to the business?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Did you find, certainly in those early days, that there was any pressures between the two of you in regards to the finances, or is that something which whether you're having a good week or a bad week, Matt, you kept to yourself, but you make sure that money was in the joint account?
Well, I've got my whiteboard, don't I?
Oh,
I got my whiteboard. So so obviously we're jumping forward. I mean, I've got an office now, but when I started, it was just in the spare bedroom. And because I love a spreadsheet, that translates to work as well. And I bought a whiteboard. So, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, income, revenue, premiums, etc. So Liv would pop in and she'd say, "Oh, so it was a good month last month," or "Oh, you should probably do a bit more this month." So I couldn't really avoid that sort of conversation. But
to be honest, you were so excited, and every new, even if it was just a new inquiry, and it didn't necessarily go anywhere, it was the excitement of someone's actually come to you, and it was the potential to have that new business. And as we said, like, you've been pretty lucky in terms of it. Sort you have hit the ground running, really.
Yeah.
That I then sort of just completely relaxed and was like, okay, it's working. And I think we both just sort of going back as well to the financial, like, planning side of it. We both just realized, like, we'll have to spend time for, like, make time for each other, but maybe not doing all the lavish dinners and things that we enjoy doing, just for a minute, like, until we can get to a stage where you've built it up, and then we can go back. It was never like, right, because he's leaving his job, we're never going to do those things again.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, this is just a short term, just so that he can get it off the ground.
Yeah,
really.
I think we were both willing to sacrifice, but without getting comfortable. We were willing to sacrifice for a year everything else, but I still wanted to keep going and driving it and making it as successful as it could be. It wasn't a case of just getting to a certain point and going, right, bills are paid for this year, you know, it was pretty full on. But yeah, we just sort of tightened the purse strings a little bit for the first 6 to 12 months and took it from there. But that, again, they're honest conversations that we had before I done this. You know, yes, it was a bit rash from me. Like, I came home after meeting you saying I want to do this, but you know, we had the conversation about what the finances would look like before I really chucked it in.
And to be fair, that question, that thing I said to you to go home and do was all around just trying to understand how brought in Olivia was to obviously this, and obviously that's obviously helped with the journey. But I mean, Olivia, did you find yourself at times going to the whiteboard and like, or a bit anxious if you looked at the whiteboard, or was it one of those things where you just, you know, you got that feel from Matt that work was coming in and things were looking optimistic?
I didn't really go to the whiteboard and be like, please let there be another £1,000 on there. No, to be honest with you, I wasn't that bothered about that part of it. I preferred seeing him, you know, light up when he was like, oh, just put a new bit of business on, you know, like that for me was more important. Like, he was like enjoying it, and it was a bonus that, you know, he was building to the financial side of things as well. So yeah, I wasn't really, I don't know. Now I think maybe looking back, I'm like, it wasn't that bad, but maybe at the time
it probably would have been,
it would have been more heightened, because it was like once one bit of business was on, it was like, where's the next one coming from? So yeah, maybe at the time I wasn't as sort of confident.
When did you, I suppose, Liv, when did you think to yourself, oh, actually, this is working? This is going to work out the way we expected it to work out?
I would say sort of within the first 6 months, really, because I obviously knew that he had that amount of money there sort of to cover everything. And once he was getting closer to that 6-month mark, it was like, we've not got anything to worry about. You know, I've got enough now to sort of see me through until next year. And then it was sort of just, the ball was rolling then, wasn't it? And I don't know if you want to touch on covenants later. But obviously then once we'd got to sort of the 12-month stage, I then thought, okay, well, as long as we get through that first year and he's got clients that maybe want to come across after those 12 months, then we're laughing, really. So I'd say probably the first 6 to 12 months were the most nervous. Yeah.
A couple of questions are coming, both for you, Matt. Don't take it personally, Liv. I'm sure there'll be some questions for you, but Anthony's asked the question, what was the first major business milestone, and was Liv involved?
So no, you wouldn't have been involved. I think the problem is with milestones. It's a really good question, because looking back, the milestones, you set a milestone, and the one thing I would say is you absolutely have to celebrate every milestone, because I set a milestone of, at first I was like, I want £100,000 premium, which for anyone that works in the industry can work it back to roughly what the commission might look like. But you might get to 90,000, and then all of a sudden you think, well, actually, I don't want 100,000 anymore. I want 2. And so the first major milestone was £100,000 premium, but then very quickly it would be, right, okay, well, I want to get an office, and I got an office last September, and that was the next major milestone, because that was an unnecessary cost, if you like, but I was able to afford to do it, which was a nice feeling.
Yeah, and I presume Liv was involved because you're trying to get out of the house at that point.
Oh, the office bit.
I was definitely involved with the office.
Liv was office hunting. No, that one Liv was involved in, because it was a case of, look, this is going to be good for us because I was so busy at the time that it's going to get me out. But it also means that my quality of work is a lot better, that if it's a Friday afternoon and I want to come home at 3-4 o'clock, I've got the ability to do so.
And when you come home at 3 or 4, Liv knows that you're home as opposed to working.
Yeah, exactly that.
Which makes a lot of sense. Another question there from Jordan. Thanks, Jordan. What was the most unexpected thing you encountered when you went live, started trading? And is there anything you would have done differently?
So the most unexpected thing, and it comes back to perhaps a little bit of like imposter syndrome, is the most unexpected thing was the amount of people, business owners, clients and prospects, that when you told them that you are a one-man band leaving big companies and doing it for yourself, the amount of support that you get. I was blown away by the amount of people that I spoke to that are so for the little man, like the small guys that's going out and trying to make some money. That was the thing that I was most surprised by, the amount of people that because I thought maybe I might get some objection. It's well, who are you? What's your buying power situation? And obviously we can get into the technicalities of momentum, but I thought I'd have some awkward conversations like that. But actually it was the complete opposite. So many people are supportive.
And to be fair, to a certain extent, the reason why you're doing it is exactly the same reason why they supported you, is they've been through a journey. It's a pay it forward type mentality, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't want to see people make the same mistakes. And is there anything you would have done differently?
Is there anything I would have done differently? It's a tough one to answer, because now I look back, I would have got an office earlier. But all of this conversation so far has been about financially planning, and that's sort of a cost that you don't need in the first sort of 6 to 12 months potentially. So there probably isn't anything I'd have done differently. But you're looking at me as if you think I should have done something differently.
No, I think what you say is that you wish you would have done it sooner.
Oh yeah,
I think that's the only thing that I would add.
That and that's something that before I started, Alice, you put me in touch with a few other ARs to speak to, and every single one I spoke to, without exception, said, I wish I'd have done this sooner. Wish I'd have done it earlier.
Yeah, and I think that comes a lot of it down to the actual planning process, isn't it? Back to what you're saying is, I need 3 months, I need 6 months, or do I need 8 months? What is that number that you need in the bank to make it happen? Right, excellent. Okay, well, look, I'm just going to move the conversation on a little bit here, and sort of like some of the legal and the compliance challenges that you faced. So, look, you obviously had restrictive covenants preventing you from reaching out to former clients, and obviously even dealing with them, which is a fairly standard covenant in the market now, which is non-dealing, non-solicitation. How did you plan for that period, and how did you drive prospects? I mean, there's a quote there from Lincoln and Lincolnshire around how did you drive prospects and quotes within that period of time?
Yeah, so I've got, for those that don't know, I've got a specialism. So I work predominantly in the hospitality and retail sector. So the covenant thing, I planned for it by literally saying that I'm 1,000,000% not going anywhere near that. If a client had even contacted me, I would have responded saying, can't talk to you. It was planned for, but it was almost out of the way. It was completely starting from fresh and from scratch, sorry. And because I've got the specialism, all I done was I drew up a marketing plan, and it was a case of just getting in front of as many people as I possibly could, not necessarily the end client, not necessarily the restaurant operators themselves, but getting in front of accountants, getting in front of finance providers, getting in front of restaurant consultants, opening consultants, anybody that was around the industry that wasn't a client or a prospect, just getting in front of them, because I could make 100 cold calls a day, or I could meet one person who has a book of 100 contacts themselves. And that's the way I viewed it. It was trying to get to the top for it to filter down, as opposed to just making 100 calls and potentially speaking to 5 people.
Excellent. And how did you navigate the FCA approval process? Obviously, there's some people here who won't be familiar with the appointed representative process, but how did you get through that? How long did it take from, I'm going to start, to actually getting going?
So it was very quick. I mean, in terms of timescales, I wouldn't be able to tell you, because momentum helped me through that. And do you know what? It was so seamless. I can't. I've got friends who have started their own direct brokerages, and all they talk to me about is how long the process takes and how much of a stressful process it was. I remember filling out forms and applications, but I don't remember there being any hiccups or any delays. So I can't really answer the question.
Okay, and where are we on the questions there? I mean, Olivia, You worked, well, you still do. You're still on maternity leave at the moment after welcoming Teddy to this world. But you've no doubt seen people being impacted by people coming and going in the business that you've worked in, and the impact of covenants. What was your concerns? You talked around before about, well, after 12 months, when he can go after his old clients, the world will change. How did you sort of manage that from start to finish?
I think that was another sort of fear of mine, was that he does work for a specialism. So it's not going to be a huge market. Retail and hospitality is quite sort of
niche,
yeah. And they sort of, one person will go from one company to the other, so you kind of build relationships and then pick up the business that way. And I thought, oh God, it's quite a small market as such. What are you going to do if you can't stick with what your specialism was? And I think that was quite a fear of mine. But I think you just opened up to anything, really. And being in London, he said, right, we're going to target some of the small businesses near where we live. So I think that was another thing that you did, sort of going back to the question. You went into the restaurants local, didn't you? And sort of...
Yeah, I should have answered that. Sorry. Yeah, I think it was Lincoln that asked it, wasn't it? I did go around all of the hospitality and retail businesses in my local town, because I thought, well, I'm just going to sit here. I've got no clients to do any admin for. And ironically picked up one of my biggest clients by doing it, didn't I?
Yeah.
There's a restaurant in the local town, and they've actually got 7 sites across the country. So, yeah.
It's just, sort of getting your face out there. And I think we actually went and ate in one of the restaurants, didn't we? And then I think sort of putting a face to a name and sort of making himself, a bit more known within our area, that then started picking up. And then it was, he would speak to somebody, and it kind of just went on like that. So then I thought, do you know what? It's not a lot to worry about now.
Sorry.
That's a delivery.
Yeah. Someone else. But so Matt, talk us through obviously the first sort of 6 months. You talked about going out and knocking on doors, and the story about how you picked up that restaurant was a beauty. The two of you went out for dinner. You wrote an email the following day, didn't you, just to thank him very much for a lovely meal, blah 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 blah. And by the way, I'm an insurance brokerage, and the rest is history. But you clearly had to adapt. I mean, you had nothing to do, effectively. You didn't have a renewal book. You didn't have clients to look after. So you kept yourself amused by effectively business development, didn't you?
Yeah, and it actually brought back a lot of enjoyment. I think that's something that I've realised is the last 12 years, you have a book of business and you renew it, and that's great. Obviously, that's the ideal scenario for us in the next few years, that we just renew a book of business. But it brought back a real passion, that sort of hunter, that sort of hunter mentality of going out and speaking to people, but actually devising a plan. I spoke to the Momentum marketing team, and we put together some literature, which is something that I've never done before, because it's always been provided internally where I've worked. So it was exciting. I was going to networking events that perhaps before I would have been complacent and gone, I don't really need to do that. Whereas I was going to networking events and just meeting new people, and that started to bring out an enjoyment. So then when you flip that back to the financial side, yes, I wasn't earning as much as I was before, but I was enjoying what I was doing so much more. So, for the first 6 months were actually really fun. They were actually really fun. Now looking back, I wish I could do more of it.
And as the business got busier, how did you manage the admin heavy side of the things, like the compliance, paperwork, invoicing, blah 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 blah? Because you had insurance broker isn't just about being client facing. There's a lot more involved. So how did you manage that?
Yeah, and I sort of, potentially to my own detriment, when I talk to my clients, I talk to them about, don't view me as a broker, view me as a consultant, make me a part of your business. I want to be almost like an in-house risk management team. But with that comes some of my clients, I'm on their weekly management report. So I get emails on emails on emails, and half of them I don't need to see. So Momentum service is great, because they handle the invoicing side, the administration with the insurance companies. So whilst being an insurance broker does, it entails all of that, Momentum do a great job at sort of taking half of that away from you. So you just really need to focus on the relationship with the client. And again, that's what allowed me in the first 6 months to just get out as much as I possibly could, because I wasn't going out, coming back, getting stuck in the office for days, trying to do all the marketing and that side of it. So yeah, it was a lot of it was dealt with by the Momentum team.
And fast forward to obviously covenants expire, and I'm sure you had the worries: will the clients follow? Will all that hard work I've done for years actually pay off and show some sort of loyalty? What was ultimately your experience of that?
So my experience was good. When I was doing my business plans, I'd done a red, amber, green for all of my.
Spreadsheet.
It was a spreadsheet. It was on a spreadsheet. Yeah, it was red, amber, green on a spreadsheet. Just in terms of rough budgeting of what sort of percentage of income I think I could bring across, and I knew I had clients that, again, I've looked after for sort of 12 years, and I knew that they would come across at the drop of a hat. Some clients are with a broker because they want the name, which again is absolutely fine. I'd undersold myself with that middle group. So it went a lot better than expected, because a lot of the stuff that I thought, not sure about that. Once I explained what I was doing, it goes back to at the beginning when there were supportive people. So many of them were just like, wow, this is great. We want to be a part of this. If it's going to be you looking after it, it doesn't matter whose name's above the door. If it's you, then it's you, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, fabulous. And I can imagine those days, then you were breathing probably a little easier at that stage, Olivia.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think sort of another thing to maybe think about, coming away from the financial side of things. As Matt said, he was approaching 30. I was a couple of years behind him, but also approaching 30. And I think with that came, but we're not engaged. We haven't had a child. Like, that's going to put all of our life plans sort of maybe on hold for a little bit. And I think that's another thing that we had to really speak about, didn't we? But actually, we got engaged within the first year of you starting, and I fell pregnant within 18 months of him starting. So actually, our life wasn't on hold at all. But yeah, of course, after going back to the original question, sort of after those 12 months, you do think, right, we can do this. Like, we don't have to worry so much. He did so well without having to have that covenant, that now he's out of it. That should just hopefully, fingers crossed, generate even more. So that's just another thing to sort of throw in there in terms of like life worries, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you've never run a business before, Matt. How hard was that?
Tough. There was actually a moment in time where perhaps from 12 months covenant finishing to say 15 months, that was actually probably the most difficult time for me, because without running a business before and being a one-man band, you're not prepared for perhaps how much work how much capacity you have. If 100% of my old clients came across, I wouldn't be sitting here, because I'd still be in the office. So it was tough having that sort of, I'd come home and say, well, Liv, I've got all of these clients back, or I've got this client. And then the next day I get into the office and go, oh my God, I've got sort of like 13 letters of appointment. I've got to schedule them all into my calendar. I've got to let the team know. I've got to put them on my spreadsheets. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. So there is, and then on top of that, you've got the business side of it. Well, what are my outgoings? Can I take this on? Do I need extra support? How much is that going to cost? What's the return on investment going to be there? And they're all things I never had to think about. So yeah, it is tough, but I do enjoy running the business side of it. And
to be fair, it's the sort of thing you can learn on the go. I take it. It's not something that you have to have experience with.
No, absolutely not. And one of the things I would absolutely recommend to anybody listening is one of the first things is get a good accountant. Get someone that's going to take these troubles away from you. Because the accountant would just email me and say, don't worry, Matt, don't worry about this. You do what you need to do. And then at the year end, we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. So just get the help and get the support system around you that you need. But yeah, you do learn on the go, and it's good fun. You're learning about something completely alien, but it is good fun.
Excellent. Now, these are some questions for you, Olivia. You might not want to look at Matt when you're answering these questions, as it might impact your answer. So it sounds a bit loaded, doesn't it? But it's more to talk about the personal side of things and how the journey worked for you both. But what do you think? Looking from the outside, what was the most unexpected or most difficult challenge Matt faced in those early days of starting the business?
I think obviously we've spoken a lot about the financial side of things. I think that was a hurdle for both of us to sort of take on. But in terms of challenges just for Matt, it was sort of, I was concerned about how he was going to deal with sort of the stress of running it, sort of the time management. Is he going to be, completely married to his job, or am I going to get more time with him? I think that was a challenge that I was worried about. But actually, it's allowed him to be a lot more flexible. If he does log off at 3 o'clock and come home, it might be that he does that and then says, look, I'm going to need to switch on 7 till 8 tonight, or I'll get up at 5 and work 5 till 6 just to catch up. He's making it work, but I don't feel like I've lost any time with him, especially now, like we've got a baby. I was worried that, he might not get to see some of the milestones and things like that. But if anything, that's not been a concern at all, because he's just managed his time a lot better than probably what he would have done if he was employed. So
do the words ever come out of your mouth, Olivia? Shouldn't you be doing some work about now, or the reverse? How much work do you need to do?
Do you know what? More so when he was working from home.
Yeah.
Of a lunchtime, it'd be so much easier to sort of come down, have his lunch with the TV on, and then I'd be like, right, back up you go. Now that you've got your office, maybe I just don't see it because you're out of the house. But I think that's also helped your mindset in terms of being in an office. He's much more, once he's left that office and comes home, it's sort of like, right, the door's shut there. But no, I don't know. I think you've been quite good with getting back on with work, haven't you, really? Especially more so now that you've got your own space. Yeah.
I mean, Matt, you've always come across as a fairly level-headed kind of guy. I mean, we had some conversations in London the other day when we had lunch, and we're talking around, you trying to manage your workload, trying to manage the hours worked, and it was more, to be fair, it was to do with a routine, wasn't it, from recollection, about getting that right.
Yeah.
But, I can imagine you had some anxieties in the early stages. How did you manage those, and how did you get through that?
So looking back, it's so easy. Looking back, it's really easy to say, don't panic, don't worry. But obviously when you're in that moment, you do. And like Liv said, I used to be really bad when it came to stress. I just wanted to be left completely alone. If I'm working, I just didn't want anyone talking to me. Or if I was due to be doing something between the hours of 9 and 10 and my phone rang, it would annoy me because I was. So you've just got to realize that when you set your own business up, you are in complete control. If something throws you off, this isn't, as we had this conversation at the very outset, is at the beginning, you have this mindset still where Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you have to be sat at your desk.
Yep.
And it's very hard to train that out of you. And that was one of the big things. Once I'd spoke to a couple of ARs, one in particular who suffered with it badly, and he'd come to realize, actually, no, if you're quiet, go for a walk. If it's an hour and a half walk, doesn't matter. You're not being trapped when you tap in or when you tap out of your office. So the anxiety at first I struggled with for that reason, that I was just stuck at my desk 9 to 5. And if it was quiet, like it was in the first couple of months, particularly the first few months, you'd almost get guilt because you weren't working.
Yeah.
You'd make yourself look busy by, and so if again, the question that said, would I've done anything differently? I think if I was talking to somebody now who was starting on this journey, it's either speak to someone who's been there before and really listen and implement what they say in terms of around that sort of don't be stuck to your computer, or get some sort of potentially like a coach or something like that. But that might be further down the line. So just speak to as many people that have been there before. And if they say to you, don't feel like you have to be working, listen to them. Because it was in the early stages. I'd go on a walk. Once I'd started to train that out of me and Liv might go on a walk, and I'd be halfway on the walk and I'd have a business idea. And it was like, I was never going to get that sitting at my desk pretending to be busy. So, loosen up. Once you start working for yourself, act like you work for yourself.
And, it's really, really good points. And those who have listened to some of these webinars and podcasts in the past will probably know exactly who that individual was. And I remember having the conversation with him because he was, he was very hard on himself. He was an 8 to 6 man, and then, he was getting all his tasks done by about 11 o'clock in the morning, and was sitting there tapping the desk, basically thinking, well, I've got to stay here, don't I, until at least 5. Mm-hmm. And you're spot on. Taking time out of the business is actually taking time on the business, because that's when you come up with these ideas. So, really, really good advice, and quite hard to hear when your business isn't making money, though. It's quite hard, but you think you have to be doing that. But
yeah, it's so backwards. It's really backwards. But honestly, the best thing I done was just forcing myself to. It made it part of my routine to get out of my routine, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, Liv, what changes did you see Matt emotionally and mentally during, let's talk about it from start to finish, him being very, very focused and him very, very driven. This is what I'm going to do, to, oh no, I'm in the middle of it, to, it's going to be a success, to where it is today. How have you seen him adapt through that process? And don't look at him.
There's obviously been ups and downs. There's been quieter months and busier months. But on the whole, it's actually not been that bad. I think, understanding his personality as well, in terms of when he is stressed, he needs to just get on with it. I understand that, and I do pretty much just let him get on with it, because I know that once it's done, it's done. And ultimately it does actually benefit me, because I know it's for the greater good of his business as well. So, but I think if it's ever got too bad, I do sort of say like get out, go for a run, walk, whatever it will be, just to let off some steam. I think that is like a physical activity for you, isn't it? It really does bring him back down, and I think you actually send yourself voice notes, don't you, when you go for a run now?
Oh, yeah.
Because he's got that time to sort of de-stress, and I think it's a lot better for him. So it's sort of me understanding him a lot more and how to help him when he is going through those like tougher stages. But yeah, I think on the whole it's been quite nice, actually.
Yeah, well, I love to hear these voice notes after the fact.
Honestly, I went out the other Saturday for a run. I think it was, I was out for about an hour and a half, and I got back and I was like, I've sent myself 6 voice notes all about business, and I didn't even, I was doing them on autopilot, so I started listening to them back, and I was like, they're actually good ideas. But just because I was out and completely away from work, they all came to me.
I'm just jealous that he can run and talk at the same time.
We always knew there was one out there, so well done you. And look, and Matt and Olivia, you've gone through a hell of a ride over the last couple of years, and you've got what is, and we don't want to talk too much around the ins and outs of the business, but it's a very successful business, and I'm sure you're no doubt very, very proud about that. I know you've gone through some challenges about what next, and there was the original business plan and this vision of this boutique office in the middle of London with however many staff. How do you sort of align, obviously, your desire to continue to grow the business in a controlled way whilst ensuring that you're protecting what clearly is a very good work-life balance that you've got, and that allows you to have your holidays? You've got engaged, you've had your first child, and It's going swimmingly well. How do you just now balance that to say, okay, well, look, if I do that, that's going to ruin that, or how do you sort of get that balance right?
Yeah, I think I'm now very protective over what I've built. It's like a second baby. Before Teddy, it would have been my baby, but now it's like a second child, and I'm starting to realize the longer this goes on and the more successful it becomes, I'm also very conscious that I have got I've got a max capacity, that I can't do too much, because then my clients will suffer. And that absolutely is, you don't have a business if you have no clients, right? So I'm conscious of that. And I've sort of taken a step back and gone, actually, this is working so well in terms of everything, financially, work-life balance. I'm there for a lot of Teddy's time. I spend time with him in the morning. I'm home in time to spend time with him in the evening before he goes to bed. The next step of my business, I will have to sacrifice some of that if there is a next step, So it's allowed me to almost rein it in and go, actually, do you know what? I love my life now. I love what's happening right now. But don't rule out anything in the future. It's made me more specific. If you would have asked me sort of a year ago when I got through the first year, I was really like, whoa, let's grow this. Let's find a way to grow this. Whereas now it's like, actually, if I'm going to grow it, I want a specialism. I want someone that's an expert in their field who can complement what I do. And those sorts of people, I mean, they may do, but I don't think they grow on trees. So I have much more of a growth mindset in terms of I'm willing to grow this, but far more conscious of what it might do. So if the opportunities arise, I will look to take them. But at the moment, it's just allowed me to create I don't want to say perfect, because nothing can ever be perfect, but it's so ideal. If you look back 2 years ago, I would have given everything to be where I am this second. And it's about remembering that. It's about remembering, why did you do this? And pat yourself on the back and celebrate it when you do it.
Yeah. And look, the business as it sits today, it's just you. You haven't employed anybody. You've been talking around maybe bringing someone into the business. We've had conversations around an acquisition that we have identified that might be right for you. There's plenty of opportunities, but it's, the Matt Meader of today, and to be fair, the Olivia and this as well, is a lot more, I would say, a lot more considered and a lot more thoughtful about taking that next step, because fundamentally you don't need to take it. And if you do take it, it has to be right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you start a business, you want it to be successful. You want it to be financially successful. So it's all just about, where's this growth going to come from? But now I've actually got something to protect. I don't want to throw away the hard work that's gone into it so far.
Yeah, look, I hope that Lincoln and Anthony that answered your questions there without going too much into detail. I'm very conscious of time, but just, I suppose, some final reflections for you both. I mean, reflecting on the past two and a bit years since, obviously Meader Risk was founded, what's the biggest accomplishment that you're proud of?
Me? What?
I'm going to ask Olivia that question.
The biggest accomplishment for me, and the more we talk about it, the more it becomes clear, is the life it's allowed me to have. It's allowed me to get engaged, got the wedding plan next year, have a baby, and be there for all of it, whilst building a business that's making money and it's doing well. So the biggest was the question. The biggest accomplishment.
Well, the accomplishment you're most proud of.
That I'm most proud of. I think it's creating a business that's perfect for it's just created a great life.
Yeah, I suppose for me it's just sort of watching him do it. I always sort of remind you that I am proud of you.
Occasionally.
And I'm not going to just keep saying it.
Yeah. You've only said it once on this, so you can leave it there.
I do keep saying it. No. I am obviously proud of how well it's gone, and it's still 2 years and a bit in, and I think he's done amazingly in that time, and I couldn't have, asked for it to have gone better, really.
No,
So, yeah.
brilliant. Don't say it again. You've said it once. Leave it there.
Check quota for this year.
I want to check if she's feeling all right after this.
Take the temperature. What's the biggest misconception about starting a brokerage that you'd probably like to throw out in the open now?
Oh, the biggest misconception.
If you think back to the old days when you're worried about money, you're worried about how difficult it's going to be.
Yeah, it's really hard one to answer, because I think it all comes down to that imposter syndrome, where it's easy to say now looking back, but it's the panicking about everything. Once you've made the decision and you've got a plan in place that says, right, we've got X amount of savings or whatever that might look like, don't panic. That's I don't know how that's a misconception, but just don't panic. If you've got if you've got everything in line as you planned it, don't panic. If you've got the client base, just trust the process and let it happen.
Okay. And Olivia?
Sorry, I was just going to jump in and actually say that this is to sort of praise momentum here, is that you're not doing it on your own. You've had the backing of a really strong, dedicated team. And I think that helped you as well. Like, it wasn't sort of a deer in headlights, like, oh my God, I've just started this business and what do I do next? With momentum, you've got all those agencies in place with the big insurance companies and things like that. So I think for you, it was like, I'm not just doing this on my own. I have got a team that's there to support me with the broking and the marketing, and even little things like setting up the website. That as a whole has just helped you with setting up the business. I think a misconception could be that you're just on your own and you're going to have no support, but actually there's a whole team, especially with momentum, that's helped you start up, really, isn't it?
Well, thanks for the plug, Olivia. I'll take that.
I probably should have said that, shouldn't I?
It probably means more coming from Olivia. Thank you, Olivia. Olivia, final question for you. You'll be pleased to know that you get final words, but what advice would you give to partners of entrepreneurs? What do they need to know about supporting their partner into the wonderful world of starting their own insurance brokerage?
I think in terms of support, just sort of being there for them as sort of a sounding board. Obviously, I'm in quite a good position that I've also worked in the insurance industry. So if there's any questions he's had from that side of things, then I've been there to help him. But just being there, and like if he's having days where it's tough and he might, or she might, might think, why have I done this? Just sort of be there to say, no, come on, there's a reason why you've started this, and just be that supportive partner to them, just to keep reminding them why they started in the first place.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very, very much, both of you, for joining us this evening. On behalf of everybody who joined us today, I mean, I thank you just for being so open and honest, and I suppose most of all, giving us the gogglebox view of the world from the Meader residents. I think that's absolutely so, thanks. I mean, as we went gogglebox, you never thought you'd make it, did you, Olivia? But well done. Yeah, I'll send it on to the producers. But look, we'll leave it there. As we wrap up today's conversation, I just want to take a moment to reflect on what we've just heard from Matt and Olivia. I'm sure many of you will be able to relate to the journey that these two have been on. So for those of you sitting in your corporate role right now thinking, I wonder if I have what it's going to take to make this work, I hope this discussion has shown you that absolutely, yes, you can make it happen for yourself. So finally, if you want to watch this again, or you want to join the conversation with ourselves, with myself or Sasha, there is going to be a QR code hopefully come up on the screen. I'm waiting for somebody else to help me with that. Hopefully should be there now. So by all means, scan that, or just simply drop me an email and I'll happily set up some time to have a conversation. If you do want to watch it again, obviously send me an email or a LinkedIn message and I'll get the link sent over to you once it's been completed. If you'd rather listen, then please do keep an eye out for Momentum Moments podcast. You'll find an episode with Matt Meader already on that. And this chat or this webinar / podcast will be uploaded next week. So click subscribe to be alerted when it's out. And we generally do hope that we'll catch up with you sometime in the very near future. Have a lovely evening. Thanks again for joining us.